Well, let me talk to you about something that hasn't been nailed, Anshu Khanna, and that is what's going on with my Philadelphia Eagles. You assured me that the Eagles were on the right track and that I shouldn't worry. But despite the fact that they've managed to win a couple of games in a row, they've looked ugly doing so. And my greatest fear came true when, I don't know if I said it to you or I said it to Mario on the NFL show, but I said my prediction for this week is they're going to get Deshaun Jackson back right in front of the trade deadline. They're going to feel like that's going to solve their wide receiver issues. So they're not going to go after a receiver. Then Deshaun Jackson's immediately going to get injured again. And he played one series, and then today he had surgery for an abdominal tear.
Yeah, I believe that was with us, and it's tough. I mean, and this is why we talked about maybe Robbie Anderson or one of those types being an option for them at the trade deadline, because, we know Deshaun Jackson in general is somewhat injury prone, but especially abdominal injuries are just, they're rare, and when they do happen, they have historically tended to be recurrent. So, tough blow for your boys, but I think that it's going to result in some creativity the way that they kind of were manufacturing it over the last few weeks. I think you see, I'll defer to you a little bit on this as the Doug Peterson whisperer, but I would assume that we'll see a lot more Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert as pass catchers. And, they'll just sort of have to make do with what they've got. But I did also see that old friend Jordan Matthews is back in the building.
Yes, Jordan Matthews back to save the season for the third time now since we traded him so many years ago to the Baltimore Buffalo Bills in that deal where they got the just kind of garbage Ronald Darby in return. Look, Matthews is what he is. He is probably the best receiver in the building right now. As terrifying as that is to say, I believe, yes. I am firmly on the bandwagon that Alshon Jeffrey is cooked. Just donezo. He does nothing for this team. He has no ability to create any separation. Any catch he makes, and by the way, he drops more than he catches at this point, is purely based on body positioning and being able to get in front of a defensive back, not being able to get open. I criticized this team in the past for what I perceived to be a strange decision to draft a guy in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside who was a replacement for Alshon Jeffrey rather than going after a replacement for a 32-year-old Deshaun Jackson. And I get it, because clearly they were seeing the same things that we're seeing on the field right now. This guy just brings nothing to this team. I honestly believe that Jordan Matthews is going to be the most productive receiver on this team for the rest of the season. And that's not a compliment to Jordan Matthews. That's a colossal insult to everyone else.
Oh, man. The rants on the Eagles these last few weeks have been amazing. I'm very afraid of what will happen if they lose 2 or 3 games in a row rather than winning them. But, I've always been a Jordan Matthews fan, so I'm not completely opposed to that thought. This is what, to me, Alshon Jeffrey has been, and maybe you can speak to it a little bit more, having seen a couple of years of him now firsthand. But he has always historically used his body as the main way by which to catch these balls. He's not a speedster, he's not a great route runner. He's just he's kind of like a slow DK Metcalf in some ways. And so, I'm intrigued to see how they end up looking with this full complement of players. But again, the 2 tight ends are such a big deal. Having Ertz really get going last week, I think, is going to bode well going forward. And then you've got Sanders, who, Sanders and now hopefully a healthy Darren Sproles will potentially grease the skids for more passing and more creative ways. That's just what it's going to be. And then, of course, there is the immutable Nelson Aguilar, don't forget. So, they've got bodies. I just don't know. Their best bodies are at the same positions, running back and tight end, which is an awkward fit for sure.
Well, the problem, look, and I am thrilled to have the tight end pairing of Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, but the problem is that just creates more congestion in the middle of the field. And that's where Alshon works. And that's where Nelson Aguilar works.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Not everyone can be in the same area. Look, I want to give you some stats.
What about Sanders?
Miles Sanders is a fine option out of the backfield, but he's not a go-to receiver by any stretch of the imagination. He's not I don't know, who are our most prolific receiving running backs. He's not Kareem Hunt, who, by the way, is back for the Browns this week.
Yeah, he is. I think of the way they're using him, and this kind of reminds me of Corey Clement too, where in college I wouldn't have expected him to be that type, but it seems like Peterson is using all of his ability as a running back, as a receiver. I mean, that's been Sanders' go-to, and he has not been nearly the running back I expected him to be. I think many expected him to be, but he has been that productive on a per-catch basis out of the backfield. So I think we'll see him in the slot quite a bit.
I want to give you some stats over the last 6 games. And I think I gave you stats for like a 4-game period a couple of weeks ago. We're going to update that here.
Okay.
Over the last 6 games, these are the snap counts for the Eagles wide receivers. Nelson Aguilar leads the team with 364 snaps. Of those 364, he has 14 catches in 6 weeks. Alshon Jeffrey, 352 snaps, has 29 catches, just under 5 catches a game. Fine, but he's averaging about 48 yards a game receiving. Mac Hollins, 224 snaps. He has a catch. Didn't have one in October, by the way. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, 44 snaps, 0 catches. And maybe the most damning stat that I can give you about this Philadelphia Eagles anemic offense, the longest touchdown catch by a wide receiver in the last 6 weeks, 6 yards.
Oh my God. That's horrible. That's a lot. That's a lot of a sample size too. That's pretty brutal. Yeah, I mean, again, like if it was a big issue, they should have gone after someone. There's no way they could have looked at Deshaun Jackson and said, "All right, we're going to be fine with him. Like we can trust him to be healthy. He's 32 years old." No, like I mean, you've got to. I think the lack of activity at the deadline shocked me out of your Eagles.
Out of a lot of teams, quite frankly, but.
True.
Yeah, I was shocked the Eagles didn't do anything. I know they made a couple of they made the move for Jannard Avery, who had half a sack this past week, and that's fine. But it's just, the other thing for me is Andrew Sendejo needs to be cut this week. This guy makes one critical penalty every single game, and for a team that is so desperately in need of young players, that 4th round comp pick is too valuable for me to keep a garbage Andrew Sendejo on the roster. If you want somebody, call Eric Berry. Go get Corey Graham back. He's basically the Jordan Matthews of safeties for the Philadelphia Eagles. At some point, they sign him every year, and he comes in and plays perfectly well. But I want that 4th round pick. And if you're going to bring in Jordan Matthews, why would you not put in a call to somebody like J.J. Nelson or Deontay Thompson, someone who can at least run fast in a straight line to stretch the defense? I don't understand it at all.